Hi, and welcome to the Property Side Hustle podcast. I'm your host, Paul. Today, we have a special guest joining us, Michelle Niziol, a successful female entrepreneur who has scaled multiple companies in the property sector. She has her own mortgage brokers, an estate agency, a letting agency, and she's also built her own property portfolio, starting out at just 18 years of age. She also appeared on the TV show The Apprentice back in 2016. And in 2025, she was awarded the Female Entrepreneur of the Year award. But before we get into the show, I want to say that if you're a property investor in the UK, or indeed an aspiring property investor, and you would like a mentor to guide you one-to-one and help you build wealth in property, I've just launched something for you called Property Accelerator Fast Start. It's an absolute game changer, and it means I'll personally mentor you for 1 whole hour, find out all about you. We'll have a nice chat about your situation and your goals, and then I'll go away and I'll create for you a personalized and bespoke plan built around you and your goals that you can follow. And if that wasn't enough, I'm also going to give you 2 weeks of support from me to help you start executing that plan. Now, for the full details, click the link below or visit the link on screen if you're watching the podcast on our YouTube channel. Right? Let's get on with the show. So, hi, Michelle. Thanks for joining us on the Property Side Hustle podcast. Let's dive straight into it. So, first question I want to get into, which I found really interesting when we first spoke about this, was you first bought a property at 18 years of age. So I'd like you to kind of walk us through how you made that happen at 18, because most teenagers at 18, in my experience, are not thinking about buying property and getting on the property ladder. So tell me about how you got started.
Yeah, so from an early age, Paul, I was, always interested in money, running my own business. And sadly, what happened when I was 17 was my parents divorced, and our family, it took a two incomes, to run our family. And so sadly, I was in a situation where, both parents had moved out. House was on the brink of repossession. I had to quit my A levels, get 3 jobs, and basically put a roof over my head. So so through the sort of so basically just expedited what, to be fair, I don't think I would have done it at 18, but I don't think I would have been far off. I had a boyfriend at the time who's now my husband, and we bought our first property together. So I do, think it would have probably been early 20s, but yeah, I was 18 and we'd saved up that magic sort of 5% deposit, which was a lot cheaper than it is now back
Yes.
then. And we were able to buy at 95%. And yeah, and from there, just sort of found the whole journey pretty horrific. And thought, I saw just a gap in the market as to, I thought I could do this better, or at least make this a better journey, hence sort of then becoming a mortgage broker. And that's where my sort of life into entrepreneurship started.
Right, fantastic. So it was it's similar to me. I posted on LinkedIn today about how I got involved in property, which was just a complete and utter series of events that led me to becoming an accidental landlord. It wasn't really a plan. It kind of came about, and then, yeah, everything else is history. So you've built a multi-million-pound business and portfolio over the last 20 years, which is kind of a similar timeline to myself. Been in the game 22 years, I worked out this morning. And I'd love to know, what were your key milestones or turning points along the way that it really accelerated your growth?
Yeah, so it was the millennium year, so 26 years ago. And we had, like, that period of time was when house prices really started increasing. And when we bought our first home, it was like the oddest looking house. It definitely wasn't pretty, but it had 3 bedrooms and it was end of terrace. And literally, our property just shot up in value. Now, when I say shot up, it was like, I think we were able to extract, I don't know, 30, 40 grand or something. So it had gone up, sort of quite a lot in a really short space of time. So I think we'd gone for a 2-year fixed rate. The market had then shot up. And then when it came to, I think I was 20 then at the time, um, we had enough equity in our property then to refinance. And at that time, I'd obviously, become a mortgage broker, which is always handy. You sort of know then
Right.
all your numbers and everything. And just really used, we'd obviously saved as well. We did want to become landlords, but I think it was purely from the fact of the market. We were very, very lucky. The market changed, and then we thought, hang on a minute, let's just extract this equity and purchase our first buy to let. So that's sort of where it started. And then it expedited quite quickly. So we just did a 2-year deal on that first buy to let. And then obviously the market, I forget how long it was going up for, but it was going up for a good old sort of 7 or 8 years at this point. So what we did when the first buy to let was up for renewal is we were able to refinance our house, because at this time we then got the bug, and you'll know, Paul, like once
Yeah.
you start investing in property, it's quite an addictive, you're watching the market, you're sort of going, oh, this is brilliant. Now, we weren't making loads of money. So just to sort of make that clear, we weren't sort of, they were basically washing their own face, the buy to let. And I
Mm.
think at some points we had to actually invest a few thousand every single year to keep the portfolio sort of running. But yeah, so year 2, we refinanced, remortgaged our house at the same time. Then we bought another 2. So then we had 3 buy to lets plus our residential property. Did that for another couple of years. And then the more properties you've got, obviously you'll know, the easier it is then to extract, in the sense of you don't need to take like 100K out of each one then, because that would be pretty impossible over a couple of years. But it was just the market enabled us to refinance, extract equity, and obviously, purchase on. And by this point, we were, so focused on building a property portfolio. I think I had this dream of building our own, really lovely house somewhere, having 2 children, and I really wanted to send them to private school. I've not been to private school. My husband's not been to private school, but I just had these really big dreams, ambitions, and knew that property at that point, we weren't very well educated on stocks and shares and investments, but property I understood because it's bricks and mortar. You can see it, you can touch it.
Yeah.
For me, it was like, and also from a young girl, I absolutely loved Monopoly. Like, I'd always be the banker, and I'd always want Mayfair and Park Lane. So for me, it was just that fun aspect of, all of our friends were going traveling, going on lovely holidays 3 or 4 times a year. And we didn't. I mean, literally all we did was we would go. Do you remember like the teletext holidays where you didn't even know where you were going? Like
Yeah, you end up at
200
the airport and
quid.
then you stand out. Yeah.
Yeah, 200 quid, and then you get on a coach with 50 other people, and then all of a sudden you'd find yourself at a resort. That is what we did. So we invested hard, we saved hard, we invested hard. And then, yeah, by the time I was, 25, 26, we'd amassed a multi-million pound property portfolio. So um, call it a bit accidental, call it good markets, and sheer
Yeah.
determination to, at some point in the future, reap the rewards. Always knew it was long term, though. Always
Yeah.
knew no get rich quick scheme.
Yeah, I think that's what buy-to-let is. The way that's what I explain it to my mentees. Look, buy-to-let isn't get rich quick, and going to be something where overnight you're generating huge sums of money just because you own some properties. That's not what buy-to-let is at all. And I think a lot of people have a really incorrect perception of buy-to-let, with they assume all landlords are wealthy, all landlords are rich, they're swimming in money. And like you just said there, it's the reality is sometimes you have to put your hand in your pocket to keep them afloat. If things go bump in the road, you have voids, all the rest of it. It's not straightforward, and it's not like you know quick income that happens overnight easily. There's a lot more that goes into it, so it's good to hear. You're just the same as the rest of us in the sense of landlords having to put money in,
Mm.
putting your hands in your pocket in certain circumstances. So based on that journey, if you were starting today, 2026, as an 18-year-old, with the current property prices, we all know they're a lot more than what they were when we got started out. With the current property prices versus average UK salary being such a disparity between the two, what would your strategy be now in 2026? Would you still be able to do it?
Yeah, I think you've got to still get on the ladder as early as possible. I
Yeah.
think getting on the ladder provides you choices. So being young on an average UK salary is what I see all day, every day. And those clients are purchasing shared ownership. So I think people have just got to don't be defeatist about it.
Yeah.
Just you've got to find a way of getting on the ladder. So it might be that grandma wants to gift you some money, because all we need typically with shared ownership is a 5% deposit. So 5% deposit, mortgage the rest. Obviously, yes, you are paying rent on the other part, but it just gets you on the ladder, because I see time after time, when we come to refinance those shared ownership mortgages in 2 years or 5 years, clients have still made more equity. So they've repaid the mortgage, the property's gone up in value, and that's all we need. So although, uh, is basically just using the schemes that are available to get yourself on the ladder and actually being a little bit realistic about it. So your first home is never going to be your dream home. So
Yeah.
it's almost like if you have to start with a 1 bedroom flat or a 1 bedroom cluster home, then that's what I'm going to recommend that you do. Because the minute you're on there, yes, moving is expensive. However, you have got to get yourself on the ladder as quickly as possible. It's how I did it. It's how a lot of my clients, when, the minute they get on the ladder early enough, they've been able to move up the ladder. Current markets means that, that has taken, say, a little bit longer than when I was younger. But I think it's a bit, yeah, we need to get over this defeatist attitude saying house prices have gone up so much, it's impossible to get on the ladder. Where I work and my businesses is an OX postcode. And that is, quite an affluent area. And there are genuinely ways of people getting on the ladder. So shared ownership, you're talking 6 or 7 grand as a deposit. Now that is not impossible to achieve that. So all you got to do is knuckle down and save. And I think that that's not what we're teaching youngsters nowadays is, yes, great, go out and live your life, but X amount. My niece is 16 and she's just started working for me as an apprentice in my property business. And she's saving £500 a month out of her wages. That is quickly ramped up to, I'm not saying she's going to buy a home at 16. She can't legally. But by the time she's 18, she's going to have so many choices.
And that's it. It's making it's having that foresight to plan ahead, which is not, I'm going to say, not what most young people do, but a lot of people don't do it because they're not educated in that way, because we don't teach this stuff in schools. Financial education, getting on the property ladder, the importance of these things is kind of left to parents to pass down that information.
Yeah.
Or people just have to work it out on on their own, which is not great.
No, and I feel so passionate about trying to educate people because people see so much in the media, and it's a lot of it is negative, isn't it, Paul?
Yeah.
Don't
Oh, yeah.
invest in property. Bricks and mortar is dead money, and it's like no, 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 no. I am living proof of the fact that it can really work, and you with your clients. So it is
Yeah.
about let's put a positive spin on it, and it's not as far away. It's not as far out of your reach as you actually think when you sit down and look at the numbers. Even if you're 16 and you start saving 250 a month, or your grandma starts saving, or your parents start putting £50 away a month when you're little. These little tiny increments, they really do add up. And yeah, it's I am quite passionate, you can tell about it, because I'll get off my soapbox now, Paul, so you can carry on.
No, honestly, I couldn't agree more. We spoke about this last time. We spoke about financial education in the UK for young people. They're leaving school with no clue of
Yeah.
really how to save, how to invest, what compounding interest is, how to save that deposit. Even if you're starting from zero, there is always a way forward. But I think most people just don't know how or
Yeah.
where to even get started with that. So So let's address the elephant in the room, moving on from that. Is buy-to-let dead after the government's tax changes that we all know about? Or is it just a case of separating the serious investors out there from the smaller, maybe accidental landlords like I was when I got involved, separating the serious investors from the smaller investors?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've hit the nail on the head. It is, basically the people that might have had a property and wanted to move quick, potentially accidental landlord, it's not really for them. But genuinely, if you were looking at this as a business opportunity, then they're the landlords that are going to be really successful in a market like this. So remove any emotional detachment. So, the clients where it was a family home and it was left to them, or, anything to do with probate. And although that's a great idea, they're the ones that find it slightly more difficult. It's the ones that, are really in this, whether they own a company and run a company themselves, and they just, it's a brilliant opportunity, in my opinion, for you, as long as you see it as long term, to have another business that is basically making money while you sleep from a long term growth perspective. So that is where my angle is when I'm meeting clients. Anyone who wants to get rich quick, I say it's not for you. You've got to be in this for a couple of decades, really. And I think you'll see a really good return on your money. So yeah, definitely for the serious investors, and not for the faint-hearted, not with all the changes coming up,
No.
renters
Yeah.
reform and everything.
Yeah, I think it's a lot to do with perception. I'm always talking about this. You can look at the rules have changed, and yes, the bottom line might not be as attractive as it used to be. However, you are still, with good properties bought at the right price in the right market, going to make money over the long term. You just will.
Yeah.
I
Well,
think,
when I was younger and I was having to prop up my portfolio
mm,
with a few thousand every single year, because back then you could do a buy to let like 85% loan to value. So the rent didn't cover the mortgage. So we were having to fund that. And yes, I could have quit then, thinking, oh, this is ridiculous. It's not even looking after itself. But I played the long game. So the investors that are investing now, what's to say that the government won't all of a sudden, because in my opinion they're coming after landlords and it's absolutely wrong. Yes, make sure that we're serious, make sure that landlords are doing everything right, but what's to say that the tax laws won't change and the stamp duty won't change, and then we'll be back to the good old days where those investments have turned around? There's nothing to say that the government won't do that at some point. So
no,
you've got to be in it to win it, in my opinion. So the way that the buy-to-let investments are set up now is that the rent will always cover the mortgage, because you can't get a mortgage where it's higher than the rent. It just doesn't work.
yeah,
So as long as that is the case, and every investor I deal with, not only does the rent cover the mortgage, it covers the tax and it covers the agent fees for the letting. So in my opinion, it is a win-win situation.
yeah, definitely. So for someone with, let's say, 1 to 2 properties who's maybe feeling the squeeze at the moment, what's your advice? I mean, I know what it's going to be, but
Yeah.
what's your advice? Would you sell up, or would you restructure and push forwards?
Oh, absolutely. I'd look at the portfolio, see what we could do. Are they on the best rates possible? Are they on the maximum rent? Because obviously rents have increased with all of this economic uncertainty. Rents have definitely gone up,
Yeah,
because there is a lack of properties and a lack of buyers out there. So definitely, there is no way that and I get these calls on a regular basis, clients where I built property portfolios for them. They'll ring me and say, oh, we're so nervous about the market, Michelle. I was like, no, this is the time where we need to stay tight. This
yeah,
is the time where if we're hanging on in there, we're going to reap the rewards. Because you and I, Paul, we've been doing this so long, we've seen this. Property is a cyclical thing.
yeah,
So every 5-10 years, this happens. Something like this happens, whether it's Brexit, whether I've been through 2 recessions in the last 20 years, and it's actually, you've got to see it as an opportunity. So I'd be saying to those 1 to 2, buy to let landlords, let's have a little look and see if we can buy you another one.
yeah, yeah. Let's grow.
Let's grow.
Let's
Yeah,
grow, not sell. Yeah,
absolutely.
I just think the private rental sector has always been something that's growing in the UK. Year on year on year, it goes up. More people are renting because of that disparity between salary and deposits. So you've got a growing private rental sector, and you've got the landlords that are selling up, that have sold up, that have got out the game in the last 6 months, 10 months. That's creating more and more an undersupply. So you've got increased demand, but less supply. So if
Yeah.
you're staying in the game, you are going to rent that property. You're not going to be sat with voids. It's just a no-brainer.
Yeah.
It's a basic supply and demand.
And what I
Uh,
love about the rental sector is not because, yes, we are in it to obviously have long-term growth, right? There's no two ways about it. But we are providing a service. So I own a letting agent and I own an estate agency. So I see it from both sides in the sense that, I want people to long-term own their own residential home. But when you are first with a partner, why on earth would you buy a house with them without living with them first? To me, it's madness. So not only is it, the private rental sector is amazing for people changing jobs, amazing for people, just getting together and sort of trying to build a family and thinking, actually, can we live together? So I think we get a lot of flack for, actually, we're all in it to make money. And it's like, no, we're in it to provide great homes that are on a decent level, which is why I do agree with all the new laws coming in, to be honest,
yeah,
because I think there was a lot of landlords offering substandard housing and not looking after their tenants. Now, I've never done that. Mine have always been, over exceeded the expectations. And actually, they're providing, we're actually providing a really good service rather than just in it all. Yes, we're in it for long-term growth, but at the same time, the rental sector is such an important sector for all those reasons.
yeah, yeah. As a landlord, you've got to keep your customer happy, haven't
Mm,
you? As well at the end
absolutely.
of the day.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do think that the changes are. Yeah, they're needed. A lot of them are needed. Obviously, no one likes paying more tax. That's
No.
human nature. But and we'll always try and find ways around that, legally. But I think it was needed to get rid of the amateur landlords who
Yes.
don't take care of the tenants, who don't provide quality homes for people. They do need to be pushed out, and so therefore, I think some of these changes are actually going to be a benefit in the long run, definitely for tenants, especially.
Yeah.
So obviously, we mentioned it at the beginning. You have appeared on The Apprentice back in 2016. It's 10 years ago. I
10
can't believe it's
years
10
ago.
years since you were on that.
No, it's
Um,
gone so fast.
that was season 12, I think. So
Yeah.
what made you decide to go on the show when you already had successful businesses?
Yeah. That's what the producers kept asking me, to be honest.
Why are you doing it?
They were like, why would you want to put yourself through this when you've already got a successful business, and I think what it was for me was I was super lonely and bored running my businesses all by myself. And because you don't know, I don't want to say how good you are, but I had nothing to benchmark against. So you're sort of running your companies and you're thinking, I think I'm doing all right. But social media has changed over the last 10 years, and it's easy to see
Oh,
now
yeah.
and benchmark yourself and actually connect and chat to other business owners. 10 years ago, it was really quite difficult. And I just used to watch the show, and let's face it, they make you look like an idiot, the way that it's edited and cut. And I'd be
Yeah.
sitting at home going, oh, that's ridiculous. Like, why have they done that? I would do this so differently. So I just thought, I'm a competitive person. I thought, one, am I good enough to get on the show? That was number one. And number two, would I be good enough to win it? So I just applied, and actually I applied a number of times, got through various rounds, and at each stage gave it up. So there was one year where I had Olympic tickets, and Mo Farah was running at the London Stadium
Yeah.
on the final day. And I sort of rang the producers, the casting team, and sort of went, oh, I've got Olympic tickets for the same day. Can you move some of my auditions? Because the audition process is 3 months. And they were basically like, uh,
No.
I'm sorry, but why would we move that for you? I thought, but you don't ask, you don't get. So
Yeah.
that was a bit of a dilemma. And I just thought, do you know what? If it's meant to be, I'll get on it again. So
Yeah.
did that, went and the Olympics was absolutely amazing. Like I thought I'm never going to see that in my lifetime again. Whereas actually I could apply for the Apprentice again. So, and I'm so glad I did, because I don't think I would have been ready had I got on the show at that point. So then I applied again. It was a good like 3 or 4 years later. I can't remember the timeline, and I actually got on the show. And yeah, it was incredible. What an experience.
Yeah. So how do you think that experience of being on the show changed you personally and professionally?
Oh, it changed. It was like a whole year of therapy. So the
Really?
whole year, that show is a whole year of your life. So it's say
Right.
3 or 4 months auditions, and they were brutal. The auditions was probably the hardest thing still to date I've ever had to do. You know,
Worse than the interviews. Did you get to the
I didn't
interview?
get to the interview stage because I got
Right.
booted out week 1. So we like to say, I had a little cameo role on The Apprentice, but I did what everyone else did on the show, apart from the weeks where obviously I wasn't there. So I still got to
Yeah.
experience everything else. And actually the exec producers said to me, you either want to get booted out week 1 or you want to win. Because week 1, you're getting a lot of press because you're first out. And then the winner obviously gets a lot of press. So, you know, but basically for me, it was just, the media exposure and just actually doing the show. You would hire any single one of those contestants. So although you're sitting there going, oh my God, I can't believe that they've just done that. Any single one of them would be your CEO.
Yeah.
They were that good of a level.
Yeah.
And that shocked me. That shocked me because the way that the show airs is definitely not the people that are on the show.
Yeah. Do you think the show's changed now compared to what it was when you were on it?
I do. I think it's gone. See, when I went on it, yes, there were some really big, bubbly characters. And I thought I was relatively boring compared to some of the others that got, because some of the others you thought you knew they're definitely going to go celebrity Big Brother, that sort of route. And I was
Yeah.
never interested in that. Like, I'm a serious business person. Now, you could say, well, why, if you're a serious business person, why would you go on a show like The Apprentice? Because it's not deemed to be, it's not aired like that. But for me, it was the media exposure. So obviously I went on to win, but I knew what the PR and media and the doors it would open for me if I got on the show. And that's exactly what I did with it. But I
Yeah.
think nowadays, I do think because it's reality TV, I don't doubt that they're a very good level. The production team do an amazing job at casting. It's all business related questions. So
Yeah.
not any of it was, I mean, we did have to build a flat pack furniture from IKEA at one point, and that was all filmed, but that was more about teamwork and how you came across on camera and, how you worked with your team members. Cause of course they have to have that on the show. You have to work with the team. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah, I think sadly, a bit like Love Island, I think we weren't allowed social media when I did the show. So I didn't come out with hundreds of thousands of followers because I wasn't even allowed to have any social media. So whereas
Yeah.
now people will probably be doing your social media whilst you're in there. So I think from a sort of reality TV business perspective, people are going on there with a whole different agenda to when I did it. Um,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't think
Just
I'd
purely
apply for it
business.
now. I don't think
Yeah.
I'd apply for it now because I do think it has changed, but I've still got really fond memories of doing it,
Yeah. I
and
bet. Yeah.
what an experience.
So, what do you think? What would you say is the biggest takeaway from doing the show that you still actually apply in your business today? Is there anything that just stuck with you from the experience that you still use?
Yeah, Lord Sugar said I didn't listen, and at the time I didn't. So, like, I think in our task, all the team were go to, it was a car boot sale task, and we had to go to markets. One was Portobello Market and one was another market. I forget which one it was. Anyway, everybody said go to the other market, and I didn't. I said, well, no, I think it's Portobello. So, and then my husband used to say, oh, you never listen. And when Lord Sugar tells you that you don't listen and you don't take people's feedback on board, then you start listening. So listening was a major one. And then the other one was making decisions really fast. So when you're, prime time telly, cameras are in your face, you can't be sitting there umming and ahhing. You are literally like, they're all, especially when I was project manager, they are waiting for you to make a decision. And so learning to make a decision really fast really helped me, because
Yeah.
I like to think I'm a really nice person. And sadly, that doesn't always go well in business. So whether that's dealing with an employee or a contractor or a client, or, if you show any sign of weakness, people will try and take advantage. So
Mm.
the show definitely toughened me up. So better listening skills, and, I definitely am a tougher business person because of it. So only positive things came out of it, really.
Good. So do you think the exposure from The Apprentice opened doors for yourself that you weren't expecting, or did you have to overcome any misconceptions from being on a reality TV program?
Yeah, so it definitely opened doors without question. So I got offered like loads of, keynote talks was a big one. Because when I did the show, there was like record, not because of me, but it was just the height of The Apprentice was the year I did it. And it was like 13 million people watched the episode that I was on, which was record breaking numbers at that time. So when I came out of the show, I did over 200 interviews. So whether that's radio, TV, magazine.
Wow.
So the media training aspect of it was amazing. And then I went on to do keynote speaks. Like, love it or hate it, back then you definitely knew who was on The Apprentice, and you almost had a level of respect even if you didn't like the show. So yeah, I got a lot of opportunities, and I totally capitalized on those opportunities. I think it netted me about £1 million over the coming time, just by being on that show for a week. So,
Yeah,
which obviously I invested in more property, and we built
of course
we
you
bought
did.
more properties. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
but the media backlash was brutal. They're
Yeah.
talking about your personal appearance. There was thousands and thousands of tweets about my fringe. I mean, but I use all of that. It never ever made me upset, in the sense that I didn't ever cry about anything. I did go
Yeah.
looking. So Instagram and Facebook were not that massive then. It was Twitter.
Yeah.
So my fringe was trending on Twitter on that day. I think I've got some screenshots somewhere. And that absolutely baffled me. I was just like, I can't get my head around why anybody would be interested in that when this is a business show. But what I do is I use all of that collateral for like a really good keynote speak, talking about resilience and stuff like that. And especially
Yeah.
being female, when somebody comments on your appearance when you're a female, like, it's a bit of a shock when you're not doing a modeling show or so yeah, so that opened up my eyes to, quite yeah, the media frenzy was quite full on.
Yeah, it's another world, isn't it? It's not normal. It's
No,
not normal in any way, shape, or form.
no.
So moving on from The Apprentice and being on The Apprentice in 2016, property investing in 2026. Um, what's your honest assessment, would you say, of the UK property market right now? And are we in people ask me this all the time, so I'm going to ask you, are we in a good buying window, or should investors be cautious right now?
Good buying window.
Yeah.
So, again, it's a question that I get asked all the time. And it's like, when is there ever a good time to buy property? If I had a pound for everyone that asked me that, and probably same with you, Paul, then yeah, I would probably be a billionaire by this point. So,
Yeah.
it for me, it's when the opportunity is right for you. So for instance, I met with two clients last week, and they've inherited X amount of money. So they're like, do I sit on it? And I'm like, absolutely not. Because, at the moment, house prices have settled, interest rates have settled, even though the sort of, recent Middle Eastern conflict has caused, a slight uncertainty in the financial markets. However, buy as soon as you can. That is always my advice. Don't sit and wait for anything, because when you're investing in property, as you know, If there was a recession, rents go up. So as long as you don't need to sell anytime soon, you just ride it out. So
Yeah.
my advice is you have to get on with it, and as soon as possible.
Yeah. I always say, yesterday.
Yeah,
Is it a good time to but yeah, you should have been buying yesterday.
yeah, absolutely.
Because I mean, it's a throwaway remark, but I think there's a lot of truth in that.
Yeah,
If you can, you should.
yeah.
Simple as that.
Because what's the worst that's going to happen? If
Exactly.
if people go, oh well, what if my house goes down in value 20 grand over the next 6 months? And I go, but rents would have gone up. So
It doesn't matter unless you're selling. If
absolutely,
the house dropped by 20 grand and you decided not to sell and keep it, then it's gonna go up again.
yeah, absolutely.
So, where do you think the biggest opportunities are for traditional property investors in 2026 and beyond? Because having your own mortgage company, you must see,
Mm.
obviously, you must have so much data across the clients that you deal with in terms of, okay, where the trends are and what's happening in the market.
It's the nervous. So we talked about the landlords that are selling. That
Yeah,
is our biggest opportunity. So
yeah,
it is, the investors that have not got the right advice. It's the investors that think that they can do this by themselves. They really do need someone like you or I, Paul, to, guide them through this market. So the ones that are nervous and are not dealing with someone like you or I at the moment, and I know there's plenty others across the UK, they're nervous, they're not getting the right advice. They're the ones that are coming out of the market, and we're the ones that are buying those properties up for our clients.
yeah,
So that
yeah.
is, to me, the biggest opportunity is the clients that are coming out of the market just because they're not getting the best advice.
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't agree more. Now, you talk about moving from income dependence to financial independence through ownership of property. So, can you break down what that journey looks like practically for somebody maybe who's starting today?
Yeah, so I think what I mean by that is just as I did. Yes, I had a job, then set up my own companies. My husband had a job, but it just isn't. If you can then build a sideline where you're investing in property and you're making money while you sleep long term. That's what I mean by, and it basically is a case of saving up, but also refinancing your assets. So that could be your residential home, or if you've got one buy to let, extracting the equity from that, inheritance. So basically, just building a sideline business where it is, passive income, where you're making money in your sleep, where you're not having to do, especially if you've got a good agent, not having to do much for it, but having the guts to do it. That is
Yeah,
that is the major factor. Is people that I come across they're scared of money. And when I explained to them, we were trying to do a little bit of psychoanalysis type of stuff. It's like it's just numbers on paper. And as long as those numbers work, there's nothing to be frightened of. And then
yeah,
you can show them data, historic data, as that this is cyclical, but also, let's face it, time over time, money, property goes up in value. It's a no-brainer.
yeah. It's a very low risk. When you talk about fear, that fear is just really based on not understanding things properly, maybe.
Yeah.
And I think when you do look at the property market, people talk about the 18-year property cycle. If you're in it for the long term, then you are always going to be better off. The property is always going to be worth more than it was when you paid for it.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, there's exceptions to the rule, but across the board, that's such a safe investment. Bricks and mortar, even today, even in uncertain times, people still buy property. Because as somebody once said to me when I was starting out, everybody needs somewhere to live.
Yeah.
And that's not going to change. And you know, the 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 amount of people around the world, there's more people living on this planet now than there was 20 years ago. We all need somewhere to live.
Yeah.
um
Absolutely.
so,
And if it's
so
your home, no one can take it away from you,
exactly, yeah,
you know?
yeah,
I
yeah,
do think
definitely.
there's a lot of misinformation out there. I think there's a media loves a scaremonger. I think that I see when a client first comes to me, they have been on every course, every social media platform, and I think actually that there's so much information out there, possibly by people who have not been there, done that, got the t-shirt like we have.
Yeah,
And I think sadly then there's almost the information is overwhelming. And so then when I sit down and I'm really transparent about my journey and what I've done for others, which has built hundreds of property portfolios for clients and shown them proven results, it's almost like, and then again with the clients that deal with you, Paul, stop listening to the media and, sadly, other people who have not got, a proven track record and, almost treat property like get rich quick. And I can't stand that because it's
yeah.
not. So I
It's
don't,
the bane of my life. Do you know what I say to people literally every week? If you want to get rich quick, go and buy a lottery ticket.
yeah,
Because it's true.
it's
It's true.
true. Yeah.
It's
This
so true.
isn't for the faint hearted, but it doesn't have,
No,
it's not as complicated as you think either,
no, it's
you
not.
know.
It's not. So, what would you say is the most common mistake you see people make when they're trying to build wealth through property? When you work with investors, obviously you
Yeah.
need guidance. You see this, and touching on what you just said there, I work with so many people, investors, who've built up portfolios, but they're overwhelmed by what to do with their next move. Should I pivot? Should I change? Should I
Yeah.
do something else? Should I jump into this? Everybody seems to be doing that. And it's like, stop getting your news from the newspapers.
Totally.
Stop watching what's going on in Facebook groups and taking that as, to
Yeah.
form an opinion. Research yourself
Yeah.
and speak to somebody, somebody like us
Yeah.
or other people who can actually show you the logic behind making a decision. And I feel like I honestly just help my clients to make a better informed decision,
Yes, totally.
rather than just point them in the right direction to say, actually, this would probably be a better fit for you, and here's why.
Yeah, absolutely. Because
So,
everyone's different. And I think it takes an expert to understand their client and why do they want to build a property portfolio? What does their family look like? What do their aspirations look like? And how are you possibly going to be able to give anyone advice for that through a Facebook group? Or so for me, it's the biggest mistake that they make is, and this is what I find when investors come to me. So that could be early in their journey or like you just pointed out, they've actually got quite a lot of properties and they're not sure what to do next, is they're too emotionally involved. So
yeah,
what happens is that they've got really close to their tenants. You should never get involved with your tenants. So me personally, obviously, I've got a portfolio plus I run a letting agency. The team deal with my tenants directly, nothing to do with me because you cannot, you start feeling sorry for them for XYZ reasons. They then stop reporting the maintenance. It becomes a two-way street, so because then they don't want to bother them. So it's like it has to be a non-emotional decision. So non-emotional when you're buying it. So you're not thinking
yeah,
about when you're buying it, you can't be imagining yourself living in it.
no,
This is a two up, two down, or whatever. We're gonna basic kitchen, whatever, make it look nice, but the figures have got to work. So yeah, it's that. It's too emotionally involved and it is got to be a business. So when either landlords come to me with, quite a decent sized portfolio already, we basically take that portfolio off them. The ties are severed with every single tenant, and then the tenants now have to come through us. And then the relief is just immense from the landlord perspective. And then
yeah,
obviously, they use us then for us to recommend properties to buy where they're not imagining themselves living there. So yeah, it's definitely the emotions is the biggest problem that I see.
yeah, yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. That's exactly the same as what I see with my clients all the time. So, you're known for making property simple and strategic rather than emotional, as you just said there. So how do you help rather clients shift their mindset? And I always say buying investment properties with emotion is a huge weakness and a risk.
Mhm.
And people overspend on refurbs. I see this all the time.
Yeah.
People jump into doing flips, and they invest in kitchens where way too much money for the needs of the property, and they get emotionally involved in it.
Yeah.
So is it very much for you full focus on the numbers and the data, and that's it? Remove all the emotion.
Yeah. Yeah. And basically, I also then do a lot of the decision making for the clients. So this doesn't happen like with one quick phone call. For instance, like I spent a good 3 hours with a couple last week, and I'm now building them a property portfolio. And they'd done their homework. They'd done their homework on me. They'd done their homework on what it was that they thought that they wanted. They've got one property and they want to sort of build up a good 3, 4 to start with, and then hopefully up to 10 at some point. And then I told them I keep things very simple. I'm quite a simple person. So I like to deal with people that don't speak in, legal jargon and all the rest of it. So I just explain it very simply, you know, what I've done, what we're going to do together, and what I expect is going to happen with the market. Just those three very simple things. Map out a little bit of a business plan. Keep that really simple. I don't feel the need to make a document 60 pages long to warrant my fees. It is very much, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. This is what I expect the returns to be. And that is it. Keep it nice and simple, all the emotions out of it. And then you just literally see them like lift, like this heavy weight is then lifted off them. And they're just like, no, Michelle, I get it. And also I take all the decision making away from them. So I decide what properties we're going to buy. Whether it needs a refurb, how long we're going to be tied in for, because obviously they know it's got to be long term. But yeah, it works so much better that way but yeah, they feel so much happier as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a case of just removing that overwhelming feeling.
Yeah.
Also gets rid of the fear, and
Yes.
then they can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And this now feels lighter,
Yeah.
and I can see where we're going. So yeah, I get that all the time with clients that I work with. So as moving on slightly off that topic, I want to talk about women in particular and business and financial independence. So as Female Entrepreneur of the Year 2025,
Thank you
congratulations.
very much.
What do you think holds women back from building financial confidence in property and in business as well?
So it's definitely not capabilities from, the business women that I sort of, have frequent communication with. It is definitely confidence. So it is emotional attachment. As women, I think we're slightly more emotional than men. And it is just the fear, what if this goes wrong? What if, what about as women, we tend to want an A, B, C, D, E plan. So definitely not that they're not capable, but just more
Yeah,
fear factor and lack of confidence. And when I say fear, it's like the fear of money. They don't, again, the education around money is the majority of clients I see, if they're a couple buying, or it's typically the male party who makes the decision making, takes the calls with me. It's probably 30% women, 70% men. So I think it is just that, again, not that they're not capable of understanding, it's just more the fear of, actually, I'd rather not know, or, it's that education piece that we need to build around with women, investing in property.
yeah. I see that a lot with my clients. It's pretty much a 50-50 split between male and female, the clients that I work with, helping them invest in property. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. I see the same thing. So yeah. Now, you're a mum of two, running multiple businesses, spinning many plates here, there, and everywhere. What's the reality of balancing kids and family life with everything else that you've got going on?
There is literally zero balance. I am literally on a daily basis firefighting. So,
Yeah,
no, I think it is just genuinely, I don't get it right all the time. So I am very much like, one will take precedence over the other on a daily basis. So, if some drama's kicked off at the office and I need to be there, or, then sadly I'm not present with the children. And then the alternative, like this week, in the next 2 weeks, we've got obviously end of term coming up. So there's all sorts of Easter parade hats that we've got to make. There's runs and cross country runs and stuff. So I make sure I'm there for every single one of those events. And then the notifications go off the phone, and, work just has to I have to deal with that later. So it's a constant juggle battle. But what I think I'm quite good at is not beating myself up. So I just sort of go, I am running these businesses. My children are really lucky to go to the school that affords us to, my husband runs a business, I run a business. So it's both a juggling act. Um, However, they also do see I'm there for the key important parts, don't miss a sports day, don't miss a nativity play, but also that mum does work super hard. So, I think that's the key thing. I think, not just women, but just parents in general, you always feel really guilty about the fact that how hard you work and that you might not be present. And it's like, it's just a daily, I've got to try harder. And I will get to the end of the day and I will reflect and I'll go, oh, do you know what? I wasn't listening when Isabella was telling me about this little story at school. Do you know what I mean? Because in my head, I was thinking about, I've really got to submit this mortgage for this client. And then, before I go to sleep, I just go, that wasn't great, Michelle, you could have done better. Let's go again tomorrow. And I think that's
Yeah,
the way I deal with it. I think,
yeah.
because
It's
otherwise the mum guilt creeps in, the parent guilt creeps in. And, you just got to keep trying. You got to just keep trying your best.
Yeah, I think that's it. There is, I don't think perfect exists in that scenario. I think a lot of people look for work-life balance, and I think it's a bit of a myth, to be quite honest. We're all firefighting. We all have, good days, bad days, and moments. I think one thing I always remember is my kids. We were sat down having an evening meal, and me and my wife were talking business, talking property, and my son said to me, "Can we talk about something else? All we ever hear is property, property, property." And he was a teenager at the time. And it always stuck. And I thought afterwards, yeah, maybe we need to,
Yeah.
when we're having a meal, maybe not talk shop. But
Yeah.
it's difficult because
It is
it just
hard.
consumes every thought in your head. So
Yeah.
it's tough, isn't it? It's
But
tough.
that's great though, because you've taught your son to feel like it's a safe space to communicate how he really
Yeah,
feels. So the positive that I'm listening to is the fact that he had the guts to say that. And actually you've then taken the feedback on board, because that's all we can do, is it? Isn't it?
yeah, yeah,
Communicate, teach your kids to communicate. And then when you get the feedback, go, yeah, actually you're right. And
yeah,
you need to move
yeah,
forward
true,
and not do that so much.
true, definitely true. So actually, a mentee of mine, and I might have mentioned this last time we spoke, a mentee of mine recently told me that this absolutely blew my mind when she told me this. I had to go and check that she was right. So a mentee of mine told me that before 1975, not that long ago, women were often refused a mortgage, regardless of income, which is just absolutely mind blowing. And that's the generation of probably my parents and your parents. And I honestly, I think that's absolutely crazy to think that that was actually the case, that women were denied mortgages. And I know you're a huge financial advocate of, independence for women and property ownership, but also especially in relationships as well.
Yeah.
Um, it's crazy that that was,
Yeah. We
1970.
weren't allowed to get a mortgage, unless it was with the partner. And
Yeah,
then, yeah, it's crazy. Absolutely crazy. But
yeah.
look at us now.
Well, yeah, yeah, definitely. Things have changed for the better. It's just when I heard that, honestly, I'd never heard that before.
Yeah.
And I've got a mentee, and her, I guess, ideal client avatar of investors she's looking to work with is women,
Mhm.
high net worth individuals that are women specifically. And when she came across this fact, it's like, that sounds like it can't be true, surely.
But I
But
think, back then, like the men were the higher earners and be seen to be the breadwinners. And
yeah,
I think in a lot of cases that was the case.
yeah,
So you kind of sort of can't blame the lenders in the sense of, that was predominantly, I'm not saying all the time, there was obviously some very successful women back then, but now just times have changed and things are different. And I think it's really important for women that are, successful to still bring up women. I think it's that confidence bit for me. It's definitely, women are not great at being visible. They're not great at, they have a fear over money. They're not great at being confident, because we've been seen, we need to be quiet, which is something I'm not very good at. In the background, for many women. So yeah, it's just bringing them to the forefront, isn't it, to be a bit more equal.
Yeah, definitely. Couldn't agree more. So to finish off the podcast, some kind of rapid fire questions. I've got a couple for you. So if you could give only one piece of advice, property advice that is, to our listeners, what would it be?
Get on the ladder as soon as possible.
Get on the ladder. Fair enough. Straightforward. So what's next for yourself? Any new ventures, goals that you're working towards? What's the rest of this year look like?
Yeah, so I'm expanding, continue to grow, sorry, not expand. I think my accountant would have a hernia if I set up an eight property business. So just expand the companies that I've got now in the ecosystem that we are under IMS Property Group. And also for me personally, I'm doing a lot more media, TV work, podcasting. So thank you for inviting me on your podcast. Basically just to, try and educate as many people as I can about either getting onto the property ladder as early as possible or investing in property and building a property portfolio again as early as possible. And just purely because I know this isn't a rapid fire answer, Paul, sorry. Just purely because I've been so successful doing it. I've created millionaires through the clients that I've worked with. I know how valuable property is over time. Why would we not want to share that gift with others?
Yeah, that's the way I see it.
Yeah.
I love mentoring and coaching people through property investing because quite often I've worked with people who at the beginning of that journey just didn't foresee the potential
Yeah.
in property, but also in themselves.
Yeah.
And taking them on that journey then step by step to a place where they've built income and scaled and they look at the world in a different way. And that's so gratifying to see that change in somebody. It's
Yeah.
unreal.
Well, we'll never get to do that again, as in ourselves.
No.
So for us, we get to live through that first time of growing and building. That's what I love. That's the buzz I love, is that
Yeah.
I'll never be able to do that again myself because,
Yeah.
it is what it is and, it's expanded and all the rest of it. But to actually live that journey time and time again through my clients is what makes me carry on doing it. It's just,
Yeah.
it's priceless, that feeling.
Yeah. It is. It is. I do enjoy it. It's it's a nice feeling where, especially when I help somebody go from not believing in themselves to believing in themselves and doing something and then seeing their excitement. It's so infectious. It's
Yeah.
so nice to see. So where can our audience connect with you and learn more about your work?
So I'm on LinkedIn, Michelle Niziol, Niziol, and also another quite good platform that I'm on quite a lot is Instagram, and that again is at Michelle_Niziol.
And I'll put those links in the show
Thanks,
notes
Paul.
and on YouTube below the video. So thank you for joining me, Michelle.
That's been
It's been a pleasure.
amazing. Yeah, it's
It's
been
been
really
good.
lovely to catch up. Thanks, Paul.
Good. Okay. Well, take care and we'll catch up soon.
Yeah, thank you.
So that was Michelle Niziol. Big thanks to her for coming on the podcast. If you're an investor looking for some guidance on your next moves in property, then you can speak direct with me by joining Property Accelerator Fast Start and getting yourself a plan of action that is bespoke and built around you and your goals. That's it for this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed the show. I'll see you on the next one. Till then, stay safe and take it easy.